Since both of your films premiere tomorrow, none of them have seen them yet, maybe one or two.
Unless they've torrented.
Exactly. So, but let's give them a few insights into your films. Like, you already started, both or all three of you, to explain a little bit what Brian and Charles is all about and Duel is all about, but maybe you can give us a little more details on what kind of story we're looking at, what kind of film we're looking at, in your own words.
Brian Charles it's a film about Brian, played by David and written by David, who is a lonely inventor in the sort of Welsh countrysides in the UK, who sort of is building himself odds and sods, but sort of like struggling to deal with his loneliness. So he has the idea to build himself a robot, which is Charles, who Charles eventually, spoiler, comes to life. And then it's about their kind of friendship and their kind of the troubles of their relationship, and then how that sort of, and it takes place in this sort of small town where there's some antagonists there, there's love interest there, but it's ultimately about kind of friendship and letting go. But one of the characters is a robot made out of a washing machine and a mannequin's head.
Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Would you agree with the synopsis of the film?
Did you make up anything?
Yeah, he's built a robot out of a washing machine and a mannequin head. And when you watch it, you'll probably think, well, that's just a bloke in a box, because you can see Chris's legs. But we wanted that. We kind of wanted to be cheeky, and we didn't want him. We wanted the robot to be really lo-fi. So the top half is sort of believable. The bottom half is not believable. It's just human legs.
Yeah, he speaks in like a text-to-speech voice, which is really funny to us. But yeah, it's a comedy as well. It's.
Exactly, and I love the quirkiness about it, and sort of like, the nostalgic feeling to it as well, because it feels like, this is something a child could have built, right?
Yeah. Well, Chris built it.
Well, that's actually very insulting.
Yeah, because I used to do Brian as a stand-up in the UK, and he was like the world's worst comedian. And then I did an internet radio show where he was the world's worst phone-in host. And then the producer, Rupert, called in one night and he used this voice software, and one of the voices was Charles. And so we developed this relationship over Skype. Chris was listening, he said, I want to build Charles. Yeah, I want to bring him to life. So that's what he came up with. It took him 9 minutes.
We changed it slightly for the film, but not very much.
Yeah.
And there was just one, and he sort of like survived the entire shoot?
No, so Chris made it. So we made a short film first, which we made for literally £500, and then which we had one head for. But I knew we needed way more for the film because we had like stunt heads and ones that vomited oil. Those scenes have been cut. But like, so I just trawled eBay and just found 6 heads on the internet and just immediately bought them as soon as I found them. But they all came and they're all like slightly more tanned than the original one. So now Charles just has this sort of like slightly more of like a Hollywood glow to him, which sort of makes sense because now we had like budget to make a film. But yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the development from the short film, which premiered in 2017, right? To the feature film a little later. So Riley, what's your take on
on their film?
On your film? Oh. Well, I mean, we can talk about Brian and Charles as well.
I haven't seen it yet.
Exactly. You haven't seen Duel yet, right?
No, I mean, we were both at Sundance, but I didn't watch any Sundance films because it was like geo-locked and I couldn't really work out how to watch it, so yeah.
Yeah, and we were also depressed.
Oh, yeah, we're all really sad as well.
Yeah, really. We got into Sundance, and then 2 weeks before the festival, it went virtual, and everybody, including the programmers, was very, very upset about that. But it was because of a COVID spike in the United States. So, yeah, I think I can't recall if this is the first or the second festival that I've played at in person. I guess tomorrow, and it'll be my birthday too tomorrow, which will be fun.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thanks. But we.
This is an invitation to everyone to join us at the screening tomorrow at 9.
When's their screening?
Before that, 6.
We're
Perfect, 6 and 9.
It's all
There we go.
working out, so
I
you're
love it.
invited too.
Okay, so dual.
How old are you tomorrow?
I'm sorry?
How old are you tomorrow?
I turned 36 tomorrow.
Wow.
And I turned 33 here in Munich a few years ago. So yeah,
3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah. So Duel stars Karen Gillan. She plays a woman who finds out that she's dying from a terminal disease. And in this alternate reality, cloning exists, and you can have yourself cloned if you know you're going to die. But she ends up making a recovery, and her clone files to stay. And because there can't be two of you existing at the same time, they have to train for a year to duel to the death to figure out which one of them continues to live as Sarah. Yeah, it's if anybody was here in 2019, I had a movie called The Art of Self-Defense. And it's definitely along the lines of something like that in terms of the sense of humor. But I think it's going to surprise people. It's maybe a little darker and not exactly what you would expect necessarily, for good or bad, for better or for worse. I really love the way that it's turned out and the way that the audiences have responded to it. But I'm curious to see what the German audience thinks of it tomorrow.
Sounds great.
Thanks. Yours too.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny. I put the three of you together because I figured your humor might be a little similar. And you already mentioned humor. And I mean, the three of you have a very particular take on humor. So maybe let's talk about this a little bit. So Riley, you said your movie is funny. You laughed right away. How would you describe your own take on humor?
Oh my God. I don't know. I try to find humor in the darkness, I guess. And that sounds so stupid. Why did I say that? Oh man. I really like playing lines of dialogue. I guess if I just talk about the literal sense of humor for me and the way that the script is read, a lot of the lines or the moments in the movie are incredibly out there or ridiculous, but people just act like it's normal and they play it completely straight. So I never sell jokes in the way that maybe you would see in a broad comedy where there's like a winking at the audience to say, hey, I think this is kind of funny, this thing I'm saying. And so there's a dryness to it. I don't know, you can find truths in that sort of space a little bit more. And I call it a comedy, and some people say Letterboxd has been my favorite thing. Reading the reviews from audience members on Duel has been very, very funny to me. And a lot of people strongly disagree that it's a comedy. And that's funny to me. So I think that it's not necessarily the kind of humor that maybe you're used to, but I think that if you kind of just accept, the world and live in the world, hopefully you'll find it as funny as I think it is. And I think the characters are and the actors play it and everything. Not how funny I am, sorry.
A little hint right there. You should all follow Riley on Instagram because he usually puts those comments on Instagram. And
I've calmed down a little bit there because there's so many good ones, and at a certain point I just had to stop posting how horrible people think the movie is. But there's also a lot of really good comments on there too. I just don't think they're funny, so I don't post those. But yeah, Letterboxd is definitely. I have a love-hate relationship, and I've learned recently how many more filmmakers, because I've been posting all of them, have been DMing me and say oh my God, somebody else, I thought I was the only one who actually looked at those reviews. And it's nice to know that everyone else kind of is curious as well. I don't recommend, if you're a filmmaker, if you don't have thick skin, to look at that kind of stuff, but I definitely get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I discovered it at Sundance. I didn't know. We were going through Twitter to look at all the reviews. And I was like, oh, that's it. And then I saw someone did a Letterboxd review, and I was like, I'd never really heard of it.
Yeah.
And I went on, and we had 350 reviews. I was like, whoa. I was just started
and
scrolling.
It's just people who have never reviewed a movie in their life and people who want that to be their career. It's everything in between.
It's a 5-star, then it's a 1-star.
Or half a star.
Yeah.
Because I got a lot of half a stars.
Or just nothing. And then you just and then you click on their thing, and it's what else have you reviewed? And it's Citizen Kane, 1 star.
Yeah.
And it's okay, well, I don't believe you anymore.
So did you read all of those comments as well?
I do and I don't. I sort of skim through them. I sort of skim through the stars and just see, what are you sort of saying? But I don't. Sometimes I read them. I definitely read them at Sundance, and now there's just too many.
There's too many, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a hilarious sentence, by the way. I just skimmed through the stars.
Yeah, skim through all that. Yeah.
Did you get half a star?
You can get half a star. Oh, yes, you can get half a star. And I am getting a lot of them. It's funny. It's kind of like how on Yelp in the States, there's Yelp here too, right? Or,
There is. We don't tend to use it that much.
It's maybe a little bit more popular in the States. A restaurant either gets 5 stars or 1 star. There's never anything in between. And I find Letterboxd is full of that. It's somebody either says it's the best movie they've ever seen or it's the worst movie they've ever seen. There's nothing in between. And
it's like when I did the Edinburgh Festival comedy. If you got a 3 star, it's like you want to be hated or loved. You
exactly.
3 star.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the point of that?
We've got a lot of 3 stars.
We got a lot. We got a load of them. Yeah.
So now I would love to hear about your take on humor and about how this relationship started, because I guess that's part of the movie and how it developed, right?
Yeah, I mean, my take on comedy is very, very similar to Riley. I think that I hate it when a film is trying to make you laugh. I hate feeling like a film is trying to make you laugh. So like, just the jokes should just be inherent to like, just the story and just like, yeah, you should be you should be fair to find the laugh, if you know what I mean, rather than just be told to laugh. But yeah, we met making the short film. Really, I didn't actually know David until I knew Rupert, the producer, sort of sent me the script. But and I knew I'd seen Brian Gittins live, seen David doing Brian live as a stage show, but I hadn't met him. So yeah, I think we met a couple of times before we made the short. And just sort of got on, and sort of I sort of understood like, because the sort of the live show was so like different, and then they when I read the script, it was like suddenly had this like, it was still like the silliness of the live show, but had all this like heart and sort of emotion in it, which I was like, I really responded to, because I was like, oh, that's like really interesting, like filmically as well, like, oh, we can make something that is like stupid and funny and dumb, but also, you know, with a heart to it. But yeah, and then we'd sort of made the short, and then we went to bed. Then we went to bed together.
So what's the next step? A TV series?
What's that?
Is the next step a TV series? Like, are you gonna keep going with this character or the duo?
With Brian and Charles?
Yeah.
I mean, if the appetite was there, I don't know about a TV series, but
our appetite, yeah, we sort of, the thing with a TV series, I mean, you have to carry, a TV series would be great if you could just be like, oh, yeah, we'll do 1 episode and someone else can carry on making it. But I think we just want to make other films, really.
Yeah, other stories, yeah.
Yeah, different stories and different, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep working together after
Big
this?
time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Big time.
That's great.
Stay out of it.
Okay, fine.
I think Riley wants to join the gang.
I almost wore my baseball cap too, and we would have been the trio. But
Didn't you get the memo?
I didn't. No.
No one sent it to you?
We've got the sort of white shirt, dark trousers, white shoes.
I almost had it. Anyway, sorry. I won't step into that.
I feel like, David, you don't want to answer my question. It's like, what's your take on humor? Because you're the comedian here on stage. Like,
I mean, when I used to play the stand-up clubs, it's the same as Jim was saying. I used to find it so embarrassing that I was even in a stand-up comedy club, because I didn't like what 99% of the comedians were doing. They're trying to make an audience laugh. So I wanted to go out there and just make everyone feel uneasy and just create an atmosphere of tension and just bring out all this strange character who shouldn't be in a stand-up comedy club. It's the last person who should be on stage. So I found that really thrilling. And so when it comes to Brian and Charles, the movie, I guess it's just finding those awkward moments and the pregnant pauses and just, without sounding like just that darkness behind the character's eyes as well. And that's much more interesting than, like you said, doing a little wink to the camera. Although I don't mind that as well.
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
I mean, ours is a mockumentary, so
There's a lot of
there's a lot of actual looks to camera. Yeah.
Well, that means that the character's actually like every once in a while trying to communicate with the camera person. So then that like it's warranted. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and also that, like you said, shows the darkness more. If someone's trying to, basically, Brian is lying to the camera quite a lot, just saying like, "I'm fine," and it's like, well, we did it in that format because it was like, oh, because you can see the pain more by doing that.
You're talking about pain, you're talking about anger maybe a little bit, or even awkwardness, like you said, and I think that's also something that goes for both movies in a way, that you use awkwardness and the moment of feeling uncomfortable for comic relief. Is that something that you would agree?
Yeah, I feel uncomfortable every second of the day. In like now, 5 minutes ago.
Umbrella photo.
And I have to tell everyone how uncomfortable I am, and I'm hoping everyone else is feeling uncomfortable watching this. But I feel it every day, so I have to put it into, you know, what I'm doing, and yeah, definitely feel it. Yeah.
People use the word cringe comedy in describing Duel and The Art of Self-Defense, which I don't see, which makes me feel like, am I cringe myself? I like, even watching The Office, that never made me cringe. Like I didn't find it cringy, but it's funny that when people are put into positions where, I don't know, they sense that somebody's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and then other people are reacting a certain way around them, and they should be acknowledging the fact that this is cringy, but they aren't. I get why somebody might be uncomfortable watching that, but to me, that's why it's funny. It's why it's humorous, and I don't find that uncomfortable in a bad way. I feel like cringe makes it sound like it's a bad thing, but I think that uncomfort is funny. And so a lot of, I guess for mine, it's maybe the world itself is slightly against the character, seemingly. It's not necessarily that the world is literally piling on the character, but it seems that way. And so maybe people find cringy moments in that, or I guess something that makes them feel uncomfortable when watching that. But it's not, for me, I never kind of come at it like, oh, I'm gonna make them squirm watching this part, and it's gonna be so fun. It's just that isn't funny to me, like if you're purposefully doing it. So it has to come from a place of, honesty, and I'm never trying to like push the buttons necessarily in that way.
Would you like to comment on that? Because you felt
I agree. Yeah.
I was going to ask, because I mean, you're using very classic tropes in a way, as thing like someone being an outsider, someone being isolated, someone being someone who's not seen, or sort of like doesn't have friends, doesn't have a circle or something, and you use that as well. You use that in The Art of Self-Defense, and you're kind of using it again in Duel.
There's a loneliness in Duel, for sure.
There is, and you also use that for comic relief in a way. So I find that very interesting, and in both ways, the movies are very different, by the way, but I see a lot of similarities in the way you're using those kind of tropes. So maybe you want to comment on that a little tiny bit?
Yeah, I mean, also that sort of, like you say, comic relief. Like, I feel like a lot of the laughs come from kind of relief as well sometimes, where it's just like you do, like, if you feel sort of sad for someone, or you feel kind of like, you get emotionally invested in something, then it'll make the joke work more. Literally, just sort of mathematically, to sort of like put those jokes in after those kind of sad moments, or because comedy is kind of surprise, isn't it? A lot of the time. I mean, there's a bit at the end of our film which always, I'm not going to say what it is because it is a massive spoiler, but always just does kind of work because we've built up all these, the two things of these two characters, and then it's just this big moment of surprise after this kind of really tense, kind of dark moment that just gets a huge response. Normally a laugh and whatever, but I've sort of forgotten what I'm saying here. But
I feel like, again, if you write from a place of truth, everyone's experienced moments where they feel alone or separate from other people, or like they're not relating to other people. And I definitely have been in that position before too. I think in screening the movie for other directors who are friends of mine, or some who actually were acquaintances, because of COVID, we didn't do the traditional director's screening where you rent out a small screening room and show it to a bunch of director friends. So I was sending screener links to some people and got some other people involved who maybe I didn't know as well. And it was really cool to see how many people related to Sarah and her situation, even though they haven't gone through anything remotely like cloning themselves and having to duel them to the death. Like, that's not something that they were literally relating to, but the things that she was going through, the life changes, the moving to her own place, the loss of a family sort of unit, all of that, I think people can relate to. And I think that that's where also if you can relate to somebody, you can laugh with them too. Not that Sarah's really laughing at the situation, but I think you can find humor in the situation because you've been there.
You mentioned the pandemic. Both of your films are set in the either countryside or in nature, and I know for sure that Riley, you decided to shoot in Finland because that was pretty much the only spot and location where you were actually allowed to shoot. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the setting and about how you went.
Yeah, I always saw my film taking place in sort of the Pacific Northwest in the United States, so Seattle, Vancouver area, because of the wooded sort of feel of everything. I really liked the idea of this movie feeling very green and filled with life, if you will. And when the pandemic hit, we put everything on the back burner for a little bit, we waited, and then it became pretty apparent that things weren't going to change anytime soon. So in looking around, we were looking at New Mexico, which I didn't like because of the fact that it just did not look anything like I saw the movie looking. So scratch that off the list. Similarly, some other places, Vancouver was an option, but Canada was so hard to get over to shoot in, and the restrictions were really hard as well. Basically, at a certain point, we were like, what are we gonna do? And at that exact moment, the film fund that our movie was gonna be financed under came out of Finland, and they said, have you looked here? We know it's not a traditional shooting location, but we think that we could be a very safe place for you to shoot the film. One of the producers thought that I would say yes, and one thought I would say no, and I heard Finland and said yes right away. And it ended up being an incredible experience. We shot in Tampere, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours outside of Helsinki. I'd never been there before, but I did a lot of research before going into it. We had a lot of meetings. And then we got there, and just everything kind of fit into place. And the look and feel was exactly what I was already envisioning, minus the architecture, which actually ended up adding to this sort of hyper-real feeling of the film. If anybody's ever been to Finland, you will know where we shot, but most people who've never been there, who've never seen like photos of it, like they won't have a clue where we shot the movie. And I like that it lends itself to feeling like it's its own world. It's like this alternate reality United States, which I don't know. Obviously, the pandemic was horrible for so many reasons, and it was a very hard shoot in so many ways. But it ended up being, out of the 3 movies I've made, it's probably been the most streamlined experience. And I think it's because we had a smaller, more dedicated crew who knew that they had to get in and get out. We all had each other's backs. We shot 10-hour days instead of 12-hour days because that's how they tend to shoot there. So I feel like people were rested at night. They were able to go home to their families, get a good dinner. Just everything about it ended up being a positive experience. And yeah, I'm really happy that we shot there. The hardest thing was honestly just making sure that not everybody in the movie has a Finnish accent. And so we blended accents. We've got, Karen's got an American accent in it. Aaron Paul has an American accent. Beulah Kawale changed to an American accent from New Zealand. And then we tried to pepper in like British people who were living in Finland. We got some people who were from the States who lived in Finland and put them in there. There was one day where somebody was supposed to show up who had an American accent, and he had a sore throat, so we told him to stay home. And the producer came over and told me that, and I was like, shit, I'm in the movie now, I guess, right? And he goes, yeah, I think so. So, because otherwise, you would normally be able to say, hey, does anybody want to play this today? And everyone else on the crew is Finnish. So I was like, okay, I'm in the movie, and I'm not an actor. And every time that cameo comes up, I cringe. That's the cringe moment, honestly, in the movie. But that was probably the hardest part, was casting. there, but everything else was amazing. So I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did, if it had to work out that way.
When did you shoot it?
Where did?
When? What?
When?
What
Sorry, in August of 2020 was when we boots on the ground started prepping. We were one of the first independent features, at least, back to production, and a lot of the protocols were being made up on our, like, with us, like SAG. Dealing with SAG was probably the second hardest part, because even though we're over in Finland, they had a heavy hand in everything. But we learned as we went, and we had some incredible producers back in the States making sure that everything ran on time, and they were working at very odd hours, obviously, because of the time change. But yeah, it was scary, and it felt like at any moment things could fall apart. It was prior to any vaccines or anything, too. We were testing every other day. The testing was incredibly expensive. We're still an independent film, even though it's the biggest budget I've been able to work with. But yeah, it was definite. When we finished, it was a huge weight off our shoulders, for sure.
Yeah, we had not like that. Yeah, we shot December 2020, so we had similar stuff, like just sort of bumbling through it. But it was quite nice, really, wasn't it? Like, we sort of, because we were shooting daylight hours as well, we were similarly doing like sort of shooting 8 till 4, and like all the crew staying in these, like, we took over like 2 hotels in Wales, deep like countryside, and we chose that because it's a film, like you said, it's a film about loneliness. So we just wanted to feel as remote as possible. Like, Brian needed to feel like he lived in the middle of nowhere, and that village needed to feel like it was like, we found a village that was literally at a dead end.
In Wales? In
Wales, yeah, in Snowdonia, like at the end of a valley. It was like, I drove around for like months around Wales, and then we found this village that, like, it's like in this big slate mine. But then you get there and you can't get out. You have to just drive, 4 miles back up the road to get out of it, and that was like perfect. We kind of built the village out of other things, but yeah, the shoot was sort of quite fun, really. Just because we were like, there's a real camaraderie. It's like everyone's kind of like first job back. Like, we started in November, but like we all like took crew, and they all got to stay there, and we all like, no one could go to pubs anymore, but like we had our own pub in the hotel, sort of thing. Yeah, it was really nice.
Can I say too, really quick before, sorry, you described your film, so this is a huge selling point for the audience, that he described his film as a film about loneliness, and that's how I've always described Duel too. So maybe it's new voices in films about loneliness.
Loneliness?
Yeah.
New title? Scratch this title. There you go. I knew
Please.
that there was a reason why I put the 3 of you together. David, do you want to add to that as well, how your experience
I was just thinking about that village, which was in the middle of nowhere, just in this big valley, like with a slate mine, and it felt like a half-hour drive down a country lane to a dead end, and then we'd have to take Charles out of. And I don't feel like any of the locals kind of went. They just accepted this robot was walking around their street in the middle of nowhere. And
yeah, it's true, yeah. There's something, because Charles looks really weird.
There's no double takes.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there was anyone there. I don't really recall seeing like many. It was so quiet.
Yeah.
That's another benefit of the pandemic. Also, because I think that area is like, for some reason, I think there's lots of holiday homes there. I don't know why you'd want a home there. It's like, it's pretty bleak at some point, but also very beautiful. But yeah, I don't think we got any.
But we, I think we wrapped, and then the following day Wales went into lockdown. So we just got it in that just before the second lockdown. Yeah.
My friends who made Everything Everywhere All at Once, their last day they got shut down, so they had to go back like months and months and months later and finish their last day of production. So because lockdown happened. So there are films that got shut down in the middle of production. There are some that will probably never start up again, which is so sad too. But the fact that you guys like made it right.
Do you know some that have stopped and haven't?
I've heard stories,
really?
Not personal friends,
right.
but yeah, of like people who their first feature was getting off the ground and it was about to go, and then
we were about to start. I think we just before the first lockdown, we had to stop, didn't we?
But we were positive it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, because ours would be the movie you would shelve.
Yeah.
To be fair.
We were like, because we heard like
Do we need this one?
we heard like Film 4, they're losing money in the pandemic. So like, we'll get rid of the robot one. Like yeah, do that Bill Nighy one that we're doing, or do the Martin McDonagh one. Don't do ours. But
Yeah.
So when were you originally going to shoot the movie?
literally, we were on a tech recce. So I was in Wales with our producer, and we're just driving around. So we was 5 days out from doing it, and then as that tech recce went on, we just like, I could slowly see Rupert, our producer, more and more just sort of like on the phone. I was like, okay, well, let's pretend that's not happening. And then like, how are we going to shoot this train? And then the next location, and like everyone was slowly checking out more and more, and it's just like, this is going to happen. And then we got, at the end of the day, the line producer just laid out loads of bottles of wine, and all the heads of the department came in, and we're like, and it was kind of like sad, but it was also like, that point where we're like, oh, it'll be a month, then we'll be back here. Yeah. It's fine. So we all got drunk. It was nice. We had hotels. We're like, okay, well, and then 3 days later, lockdown happened. But then it was 8 months later we shot it.
I just wanted to add that both of the movies don't seem or look like isolation movies or like films that were shot during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we joked about it a little earlier that there are certainly movies out there with just one character or being super isolated. And, I mean, you're sort of like using the isolation for your movies, but yeah.
Yeah, my script didn't change at all, but people have called it a lockdown movie, like it's inspired by COVID. And I'm like, no, I wrote it in 2018. No, it's not.
I read that. There's a review the other day where it's like, it starts with a shot of Brian in a mask. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It's like, he's not wearing one.
That's
it's
my
like,
beard.
Yeah, it's just his beard. It's like, but then there's no references to COVID after that. It's like, there wasn't a reference in that shot. It's like...
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I said, like, no, they don't feel like isolation or pandemic movies.
But I think it's one of those things where, because of all of our shared experience of lockdown, you're able to place your feelings into the movie, and you say, oh, obviously this was inspired by or was affected by it. I don't think it was affected by it, but maybe subconsciously there are elements of that. But I always had called it, like, the very first time I used the word loneliness with my composer, Emma Ruth Rundle, and I were on a call, and she asked if I could use one word, what would I use to describe Duel? And I said loneliness. And that was a moment where I go, oh, that just unlocked something for me. And but then that always kind of carried through. But I think we all felt that during lockdown. So it makes sense that people are placing that sort of thing on the movies. But yeah, the inventing shots and inventing dialogue, or like, I had somebody in a recent review that they took down after I reposted it. They said that they read it early on for like a studio as like to see if they could be a reader for the studio, and so they got early access to it. And they read the script and they said, well, it's obvious he added a bunch of stuff after this draft, and he went back and added some lines here and there. And I'm like, no, that's the script. That's the only script that ever existed. Like, you're inventing things, but people tend to remember differently sometimes, I guess, or have it be what they want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Shall we see if there are any questions in the audience? Are there questions?
Nobody's seen our movies.
But they might know you guys from somewhere else. There's one right here. There's a microphone. Just 1 second. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for this. It's really interesting. Well, since this is supposed to be about science fiction, and you mentioned... yeah.
We're just kidding.
You mentioned Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that you knew someone from set. What's your guys' opinion on how this movie is going to affect the movie industry? Because it's a low budget, huge production, but low budget. And how it's going to affect science fiction and...
Which film?
Everything
Literally
Everywhere.
Everything Everywhere?
Yeah.
It's a $25 million movie.
Yeah, well, $25 million compared to Marvel, which has like...
No, totally, yeah. I think that the Daniels are in a very specific genre of their own. They've been making very Daniels things for years and years and years, and hopefully their success only means that more original ideas get made, for sure. But yeah, they definitely used their budget very, very effectively. If I had that same amount of money, I wouldn't have been able to do what they did. But hopefully it helps all of us in some way, for sure.
Yeah, I guess it's good that people are seeing a film that they've known nothing about or never heard of, and and it's done so well and just is continuing to do so well. I think that's only good for the cinema, I guess.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because it did super well in Germany as well, and no one expected it. I talked to the distributor, and they were like, well, when we saw it, we didn't really think that it would do that well in Germany.
Who distributed it here?
Leonine.
Okay. Do they tend to release things that A24 releases or anything?
They do now. They never used to. It's like one of the biggest German distributors, and they usually go more for like a mainstream type of thing. So that was a little under the radar, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it was super overwhelming.
I guess that makes sense why they didn't like expect it to do anything, because they're like, this isn't what we normally do, but that's cool.
Yeah. Are there more questions? No. There's one right here.
Thank you. David, you talked about your character Brian and that you have established it a long time ago. And you were also in Ricky Gervais' show Afterlife. Was your character Brian the character you had in Afterlife, or was it another one? Is it the same one?
Brian's, yeah, I mean,
it's a good question.
Kind of. Brian's, he's changed over the years. I mean, when I did stand-up comedy, he was quite bristly and abrasive just to survive in front of drunk men, mainly men, as per. And then Ricky. So Ricky kind of, although there's a little improv in Afterlife, Ricky's version of Brian, because he knew Brian from stand-up, and was to make him dirty and perverted, and Ricky likes all that stuff. But for our movie, we wanted to soften the edges and make him a bit more lovable and likable, and also we wanted it to appeal to a wider audience, didn't we? I've got young children and an old mum. And we just wanted it to appeal. It would be a family movie. So we definitely took out those sides of Brian. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the same character.
No.
It's the same voice.
With the odd same mannerism.
The same kind of vibe, but it's not there.
No.
Different backstory.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess last chance to ask a question. Is there one more? There's one. There's always a last one. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the talk. David, if I understood correctly, you wrote the script and played the main actor. How is this approach when you write the script? Did you know that you will play the main character, and does it change anything how you approach playing the role?
Yeah, I did know I was going to, although I nearly bailed out, didn't I? With 2 months, because I find acting really embarrassing. and I just couldn't, the idea of having to carry a movie for 90 minutes, I was like, I can't do that. And if the audience don't like this, then they're screwed. So I text the WhatsApp group saying, can we get someone else in who's reliable? And
panic ensues.
What's that?
Just me and Rupert quietly panic texting each other.
So I did know I was going to, because we did the short movie, I did know, I wrote it with sort of Brian me and playing Brian in mind. And I guess writing it, we definitely, there was a definite script there, but I think we definitely left areas for us to improvise, didn't we? Because I like improvisation and just trying to capture those little moments. So we did that, didn't we?
Yeah. And it's also super useful because the script is so kind of nuanced, because David just knows exactly how a sentence will be formulated and how it will be said, and it's just like, and you can just read it in his voice, because we've done a short as well. And I think also just selling that to finances and stuff like that. I think to have a script where you already know this specific character is going to work so well for that is really useful.
Thanks.
Okay, I would say thank you guys so much for being here. Let's invite everyone to both premieres tomorrow.
Are they at the same spot?
No, they're not.
Oh, okay. That would have been really cool.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. But we can only use the spot your film is playing at after 8 or after dark. so it's a little tricky. But we're going to be screening Brian and Charles at Sendlinger Tor tomorrow at 6 p.m. And Duel is going to be playing at 9 p.m. at Sugar Mountain. So come and join us. We're going to take these two with us to Duel.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
Cool. Okay, so thanks so much for joining us. Thank you guys for being here, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.